Stop, Virgo. I'm Anna from Virgo. Not a suggestion. Okay, Virgo, pay attention. This one counts. Um, there is a difference between something being important and something being serious. Important things can wait. They have weight, but they are not time sensitive in the specific way that changes the nature of the response required. They deserve attention, but they will still deserve it tomorrow. They are significant without being urgent. Serious things are different. Serious things have a window. Serious things require the response to arrive within a specific range of time, or the nature of what can be done about them changes, not because the thing itself changes, but because the conditions around it do. Because the opening that exists right now was not there before and will not be there indefinitely. And the difference between acting inside the window and acting outside it is not just a difference of degree, it is a difference of kind. What is forming around you right now is serious, not important, serious. The window is open. The conditions that make what is possible right now possible are not permanent. They exist because of a specific confluence of factors: your readiness, their readiness, the particular arrangement of circumstances that has been building toward this configuration for longer than either of you has been consciously aware of. And that confluence is not going to hold its current shape indefinitely. It is going to evolve into something, and what it evolves into depends in ways that are not entirely clear from here, but that are real, on what you do and do not do inside the window that is currently open. This is the serious. Pay attention means something specific here, not heightened alertness in the anxious, scanning, looking for signs everywhere way that produces fatigue and false positives and the specific exhaustion of a nervous system that has been asked to treat everything as potentially significant until it can no longer distinguish signal from noise. That kind of paying attention is counterproductive. It creates static over the very signal it is trying to detect. The attention this requires is the attention of a diagnostician, a doctor in a room with a patient, running through the presenting information, not rushing toward a conclusion, not pre-ordering the findings before the examination is complete, not hoping for a particular result and therefore arranging the information in the direction of that hope, but actually looking at what is there, at what it means, at what the combination of symptoms and context and history and the specific presentation of this particular case suggests about what is actually happening versus what the patient believes is happening versus what the patient wants to believe is happening. The diagnostician holds all three of those simultaneously and does not collapse them into one until the examination is complete. Be the diagnostician of your own situation right now. What are the actual presenting symptoms? Not the story you have been telling about them, not the interpretation you have been applying, not the framework inherited from previous situations that may or may not apply to this one. The actual data, what has been happening, what has been said and what has not been said, what has been done and what has been conspicuously not done. What the pattern of behavior actually shows, when it is laid out in sequence rather than experienced in isolation, each instance separated from the others by the ordinary passage of time that makes pattern recognition difficult. Lay it out in sequence without the softening that loyalty applies and without the harshness that hurt applies. Just what happened, what is happening, what the data actually shows. The data shows something you have been explaining away, not one thing a pattern. A consistent, repeating, in retrospect, almost predictable pattern that has been present in this situation for longer than the explanation you have been applying to it can account for. Explanations are useful up to the point where they are being used to avoid the conclusion the data is pointing toward. Past that point, they are not explanations anymore. They are maintenance of a preferred narrative in the face of contradicting evidence. The maintenance is understandable. It is what humans do when the conclusion the evidence is pointing toward is one that requires something of them, a change in understanding, a change in behavior, a change in the investment they have placed in a particular version of events. The maintenance delays the reckoning. It does not prevent it. Reckonings that have been delayed are just reckonings that have been made more expensive by the delay. The interest accumulates on the avoided conclusion the same way it accumulates on the avoided debt. You pay it eventually, plus whatever the avoidance cost. The reckoning is here. Not as punishment, not as the universe administering a correction because you failed to correct yourself. As the natural end of a maintenance cycle, as the point at which the cost of continuing the explanation exceeds the cost of accepting the conclusion. As the moment when the window is open and the conditions are right, and the person who has been building toward the capacity to receive what the data actually shows finally actually has that capacity, you have built toward it. Through everything you have moved through in the period that preceded this, you did not know you were building toward it. That is how most meaningful preparation works. You are preparing for something you cannot see yet, building the specific strength or clarity or tolerance for truth that a future moment will require, without the benefit of knowing which moment it is or what it will ask of you. This is the moment. This is what the preparation was for. Here is what the data shows. Not the specific details those live in you, not in this reading, but the shape of it, the diagnostic picture. Someone in your situation is operating from a version of reality that does not fully account for you. Not maliciously, not with the conscious intention of constructing a version of events that serves their interests at the expense of yours, but functionally, in the practical, behavioral, this is how they actually move through the situation sense. Their version of this situation has you in a role. The role has certain characteristics, certain things expected of you, certain things taken for granted about your availability or your patience or your willingness to accommodate the arrangements that work for them. The role was perhaps agreed to implicitly in an earlier period when the arrangement made more sense than it makes now. It has not been renegotiated as the situation developed, as you developed, as what you need and what you are willing to offer evolved in ways that the original implicit agreement did not account for. The role is outdated. You have outgrown the role, not in the abstract sense of having become too good for it, but in the very specific, practical sense of no longer fitting inside its dimensions comfortably. Of having developed through the work you have done, through the clarity you have earned, through the particular becoming that the difficult periods enabled into someone whose actual requirements and actual contributions do not correspond to what the role was designed for. The role was designed for an earlier version of you. The earlier version was real, and the role served a real purpose in that period. But the period has passed. And the version of you that inhabits the role now is doing so with the specific grinding discomfort of someone wearing clothes that no longer fit. Not dramatically, not obviously to outside observers, but constantly, in the way that constant low-grade physical discomfort eventually affects everything: posture, mood, energy, the quality of presence available for things that are not the management of the discomfort. The role needs to change, or the situation needs to change, or both. The specific form the change takes is yours to determine. But the diagnostic picture is clear. The current configuration is not sustainable at the level of what you actually are and what you actually need. And the window in which the change can be made with the least disruption and the most likelihood of producing something genuinely better is open right now, not indefinitely. Now, what's serious actually requires of you, not abstractly. Specifically, it requires you to have one conversation you have been postponing. One, not the comprehensive accounting of everything that has been wrong for however long it has been wrong. Not the full diagnostic report delivered at once in a way that overwhelms the recipient and produces defensiveness instead of actual hearing. One conversation, the specific, targeted, precisely chosen conversation about the one thing that, if addressed, would change the quality of everything around it. The load-bearing conversation, the one that the other conversations have been avoiding because this is the one that actually changes things. You know which conversation this is. It has been identifiable for a while. It is the conversation that comes to mind when you imagine saying what you actually think about this situation, and then immediately gets replaced by a more manageable version of itself because the actual version feels too exposed, too risky, too likely to produce a response you are not sure you are ready to handle. The actual version is the one you keep not quite having, the one that keeps almost happening and then retreating back into the almost. That conversation exists and it is load bearing, and the window for having it with the best possible conditions is right now, and this is what the serious means. Not that something terrible is about to happen if you don't, but that something important will not happen if you don't something that is available in this configuration of conditions that will not be equally available in a different configuration. The window closes, not forever, but to this specific version of the opening with these specific conditions. At this specific moment in the development of both you and the situation, this version closes, and what replaces it is something with more scar tissue around the edges. Have the conversation before the scar tissue forms, what the situation is trying to become. Underneath everything that is complicated and unresolved and has been costing you the absorbing cost and the holding pattern cost and the role that doesn't fit cost, underneath all of that, there is something that the situation has been trying to become and has not yet been allowed to become because the conditions for it have not been created. Something better, not perfect, better is enough. Something that corresponds more closely to what both people in it actually need rather than what the original implicit arrangement assumed they needed. Something that has the specific, sustainable quality of an arrangement that was actually agreed to, rather than one that was defaulted into and then maintained past its expiration by the inertia of the comfortable and familiar. The situation has potential that the current configuration is blocking. This is the serious thing. Not that everything is wrong, but that something is in the way of what could be right. And the something in the way is not permanent, it is not structural. It is the specific, removable obstacle of a conversation not had, a role not renegotiated, a version of events not updated to correspond to who both people actually are now versus who they were when the current version was assembled. Remove the obstacle. The removal is the serious work. It will feel disproportionately difficult relative to its actual size because it has been held in place for a long time, and things held in place develop a kind of settled weight that makes them feel more fixed than they are. They are not fixed, they are held, and you are the person with the capacity to release the holding. That capacity is yours. It was always yours. One more thing, and then this is done. The paying attention is not only about the situation outside you, it is about something happening inside you right now that is also in the serious category and that also has a window, something shifting in the way you understand what you are willing to accept and what you are not. Something clarifying, not all at once, but incrementally in the specific way that genuine clarity develops about what you actually want this area of your life to look like, what you are building toward, what you are no longer willing to build around. This internal shift is real and it is significant, and it is producing a version of you that is clearer about its own requirements than the version that entered this situation was. That clearer version has a different relationship to the role that was assigned, a different tolerance for the continued maintenance of the outdated arrangement, a different level of patience for the conversation that keeps almost happening. The clearer version is the version that has the conversation, not the version that is still in the process of becoming clear. That version keeps almost having it. The clear version actually has it, and you are closer to the clear version than you have ever been. The paying attention is partly attention to that, to the specific quality of your own increasing clarity, which is real and which is the resource this serious moment is asking you to deploy, not patience, not more absorption, not the continued management of an arrangement that no longer fits, the clarity, the specific, hard won, increasingly difficult to suppress clarity of someone who knows what the data shows and knows what needs to happen and is right now in this window finally ready to let the knowing produce the action. The window is open. The clarity is ready. The conversation is the action. This is serious. You are paying attention. That is already enough to change what happens next.